Council meeting of the 27th of May. We, the councillors of the Armidale region, declare that we will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interest of our community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in us to the best of our skill and judgment. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. Now, this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised to do so. Now, councillors, can you make sure you've turned your mobile phones to silent or off? And also, I would request that unless you've been asked to speak, please do not turn the microphones on. And also, if you do wish to vote or move a motion or second a motion, please keep your hand movements close to your face so that they're visible. So moving on, any apologies? Councillor Robinson will be on soon, so let's assume that she's okay. Any apologies from other councillors? No. Any disclosures of interest today, councillors? No. Item 6, confirmation of minutes. We've got the ordinary council meeting of the 22nd of April. We have the extraordinary meeting of the 11th of May and the extraordinary meeting of the 13th of May. Can I have a move and a second for those? Councillor O'Connor, you wish to move? Councillor O'Connor? Councillor O'Connor, you need to turn your mic on.
I have done that, Mr. Mayor. I wish to raise an objection to your attempt to close the meeting of the 12th of March 2020, which I believe is recorded in the minutes as you closing that meeting. I object to that. I don't think you were able to do that in the way you did. And in fact, you switched me off while I was raising an objection on a number of occasions. So I object to that part of the minutes, I think, of the 13th of May.
So we're after a mover and a second for the confirmation, and note your objection, Councillor O'Connor. So can I have a mover and a second for those the confirmation minutes for those 3 meetings? Councillor Gray moved. Councillor Martin. Councillor Connor, note your objection. Are there any other comments, corrections? I'll put that to vote. If you can go to your phones or your iPads, please.
So it hasn't come up yet, is that correct?
Yes, mine hasn't come up either yet. I'm waiting.
Yeah, Stacey's got.
Yeah, mine either.
Can you check with councillors, I'm the same. So in this interim, while we wait for the system, can I just have a show of hands, please? So those hands up close to your face. Those in favour?
Dear, dear.
Good. Thank you, unanimous. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I wish to vote against that motion.
Okay. You want your vote recorded?
Thank you.
Good. So there is a mayoral minute. Now, as you're aware, on Tuesday, the 19th of May 2020, the Honourable Shelley Hancock, Minister for Local Government, through the Office of Local Government, issued Armidale Regional Council with a notice under Section 438K of the Local Government Act. I hereby table that letter that the Minister has sent to us. The Minister intends to issue a suspension order, suspending councillors from office for a period of 3 months and appointing an administrator. The notice issued is what is called a show cause notice, requiring the elected body to provide a submission to the Minister in respect of the proposed suspension. The response is required to be submitted no later than 5 p.m. Monday, the 25th of May 2020. The notice invites council, and here I quote, to make a submission in respect of the proposed suspension. The language of the invitation is clear in requesting that one submission be put to the Minister from council. It is hoped that we can find common ground in preparing and submitting our response so that we may preserve representation for the community. Among her reasons for consideration of the order, the Minister cites many long-standing issues between councillors and between councillors and council staff. The Minister refers to an aggregation of issues developing over time. Specifically, these issues include code of conduct complaints between councillors and between councillors and staff, behavioural issues between councillors and between councillors and staff, allegations of bullying leading to concerns about health and well-being, again, between councillors and between councillors and staff. The Minister expressed concern around governance and the recent court action to resolve allegations of bias. As the Minister states, these are serious matters creating significant reputational, legal and work health and safety risks that must be addressed. To provide the best opportunity to prepare and submit a meaningful response, I have convened a facilitated workshop of the elected members to be held this afternoon. It is hoped that we can come together, putting aside our differences and cooperating in good faith to work through the issues that have divided us. It is hoped to find clear air and common ground on which to move forward. It is hoped that we can prepare a response that will show the Minister that Armidale Regional Council is capable of being governed by its elected representatives. We can restore the faith of community at large in its elected representatives. If this afternoon we are able to consolidate, to unite, and to agree a response, we can ratify and endorse a response to be tabled at the Minister at an extraordinary meeting of Council. To clarify, the response is due on at 5 p.m. Monday, the 1st of June 2020. I hereby move this mayoral minute. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Speaker for, against? Okay, I'll put that mayoral minute. Those in favour? Can you check with, there's no voting coming up. Stand by, Councillor. There doesn't seem to be anything coming up as far as a vote recording.
Well, with great respect, is it okay for us to repeat, to go into this while Councillor Robinson's just suffering technical problems? It seems to me that we ought to take a 5-minute or a 3-minute.
Dr. Mayor, we've got a request from Councillor Robbins, and I've just sent through to the CEO for you to review.
Put the matter to the meeting
Okay.
that we postpone for half an hour to resolve the technical difficulties.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. We have got formal, as Mr. Brown mentioned, we have got formal notification from Councillor Robertson requesting a deferment of the meeting for a period for the technical issues to be fixed. Could I have a move and a second that we defer the meeting, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Brown, defer the meeting for a period of half an hour. So we will reconvene the meeting at 9:45. So all those in favour of deferring the meeting? 5. Please keep your hands up until the second has been. So those against the defer? 4 against? Can you check with Andrew, because the voting's not coming up?
Yeah, Dr. Mayor, we're just trying to during this half an hour we'll get that resolved. But in the meantime, we'll add it to that that there's 5 for and 4 against.
Mr. Brown, that's 9 though. It should be 10 people, so someone failed to vote. Thank you. That makes the 6-4. Okay, the deferment's passed. We'll reconvene at 9:45. presume we're all here. Now, we left the meeting when I moved a mirror minute, so I'll just reiterate that mirror minute. I hereby move this mirror minute, which is to note the Minister's notice of intention as requested by the Minister. Now, Councillors, I did make an error in the early date for the response. I had it down as the 25th of May. It should be the 1st of June. So, Councillors, can we go to our phones or tablets for voting, please? Councillor Murat.
Mr. Mayor, because of the time frame, we're having a meeting this afternoon, which is Wednesday, and we have to have the response back to the Minister by 5 p.m. next Monday. Could you please advise when you envisage having the extraordinary meeting to vote on what our response will be, please? Because it's we've got very limited. You're supposed to give 3 days' notice for the public, and we've got very limited time frame to do it in.
Thank you, Councillor Murat. Looking at Friday, this Friday afternoon. Okay, can we all go to our poll, please, and vote? Now, I might get Mr. Brown just to clarify to people what this will come up as. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mayor. This will be procedural motion number 1. If it's not visible on councillor screens, if they just hit refresh, it should become visible.
Mr. Mayor, what time are you proposing to have the meeting on Friday?
Councillor Bailey, to be determined.
Yeah, Dr. Mayor, we're still waiting on one vote. We have 10.
Whose vote are you missing? Or have you got mine?
Mine.
We won't know until we close.
I'm still trying to find. Yeah, I'm still trying to find spaces. I'm logged into poll everywhere, but I can't find spaces. What spaces number that I have to get?
It's just the last one, Dorothy.
Yeah, well, yeah. Stacey drew 043, wasn't it? The presentation number.
Yeah, that's correct,
043?
Councillor Robinson.
And yeah, no, I've still got to find it. Is there a dot after the Drew, or just Stacey Drew 043?
Tracy drew 043.
Presenter not found. That doesn't help. There's not a dot in there.
It should be already in there, Dorothy, from last time.
With an E in Stacey.
Oh, hang on, yeah. Stacey.
So, Councillor Robinson, are you unable to vote on the poll?
At the moment, well, let's see. It's okay, right? Yeah, I've got in now. So now I've got to read the motion, which was basically that.
Councillor Robinson, if you cannot operate this way, we have to use a show of hands.
Well, it's just that we're just voting on the thing. So I think it's a bit difficult for me to actually vote on that. So I'll have to abstain, unfortunately.
Okay, councillors, we'll go back to show of hands, please. I apologise for this, but
I would prefer not a show of hands. Thank you very much. I think we should be voting the proper way. Thank you. I won't be voting with a show of hands. Thank you.
Councillors, a show of hands since we cannot operate via the poll. So those people who are voting.
We can vote via the poll.
Councillors, we're voting via show of hands. So those in favour of the mayor a minute?
Yeah, I think Councillor I think Councillor Robinson's got it sorted now, Mr.
So,
Mayor.
well, yes, but we'll do
Yeah.
the show of hands of those against the mayor a minute. Okay, so Councillor Robertson, can you vote yet? We've already taken this one. But
Yeah. Well, I can't vote on a motion, mayoral minute that I haven't seen. So it's just a matter of principle. I can use the go to poll, but it's very difficult to vote on something that I haven't seen. So while I believe I probably would vote for it, until I've read it, I can't. Is that sensible?
I guess all I want to know, Councillor Robertson, is if you can vote in the future via the poll.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Good. Let's move on to item 8.1. 8.1 is a notice of motion.
Someone then need to go back. Councillor Gillespie did not vote, so he needs to be told that his vote has been voted against.
Just been advised, Councillor Gillespie did not vote, and therefore, because he didn't vote but he's present, his vote will be taken as a negative. So, moving on to 8.1 from Councillor O'Connor. Now, Councillor O'Connor, did you want to continue? Yes, Councillor O'Connor.
Margaret, you're
You're muted.
Can I ask, who's got the power? Do I have the responsibility to unmute myself? Because I certainly find myself muted from afar very often in these meetings. Can you just make that clear, Mr. Mayor?
Councillors, I've asked this before, that you remain muted until you're asked to speak, whether you are talking to a motion. So you're being muted because you failed to switch yourself off. So, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, curious and curiouser. Yes, I move this motion with some amendments that I don't think will be an issue. Sorry, the amendment is simply.
I'll second it.
Mr. Mayor, the amendment is simply that the motion is actually repeated twice. It should simply read that council requests Lindsay Taylor lawyers to provide, and where it says the advice, I just want to change that, delete the advice, any documents that relate to the verbal advice to be inserted. Is that okay? Does that make sense? So delete the advice and replace it with any documents that relate to the verbal advice. And then it should read, to the mayor referred, and then after ECM, just delete in writing. Sorry, I'm just having to peer very closely at this. So delete in writing, and then after the period after informed, just delete that second sentence, because I think it's simply a repeat of the first sentence. Yep. I don't think my seconder will have a problem. Well, I don't know if she will or won't with a problem with that.
Councillors, Councillors, I will say that I'll have to declare the motion, if moved, would be unlawful due to conflict created by legal proceedings. If conflicted councillors, implementation of the motion would be unlawful.
No, I don't know what the rules are with that. I mean, I press it, you can rule. You know, I'm in your hands, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm dealing, since you councillors, unless you leave the meeting, those people are conflicted, I will deem this motion as it is unlawful.
Yeah, okay. Well, just note my objection to that ruling and we'll move on.
Okay.
And my objection.
Stacey, did you get those comments?
Yeah, Thank you, Dr. Mayor. We've got that the motion's been ruled, or the implementation of the motion was ruled unlawful, and that Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Robinson have objected to that ruling.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Moving on to 8.2.
Yeah, I'm still open. Look, I would. I don't know whether you're going to do the same thing with this one, Chair, but I would volunteer the withdrawal of item C for the obvious reason of there being current legal proceedings that this might relate to. But I would press A and B.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. So, councillors, we're looking at only 8.2, parts A and B. So, Councillor O'Connor's moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Look, this is fairly self-explanatory. This has been on our meeting papers for a while. It relates to a concern about a determination that was made to deny access, confidential access to councillors to a document, which was then appealed to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. He reported on this and requested council to remake the decision on the basis of the law that he set out in his report. Paragraph A is really just to note that that has happened so that councillors are aware of this. Basically, his report stated that there was an error committed by council's officer at the time in relation to the onus regarding overriding public interest. And paragraph B relates to the fact that we're asking council now to remake the decision in compliance and conformity with the request and recommendation contained in the Information and Privacy Commissioner's report. I mean, everybody has access to that report. I don't really want to say much more than that. That is a currently outstanding information request. At the moment, council would appear to have made a decision that is not in compliance with the Information and Privacy Commissioner's request to it. And so paragraph B is asking council to remake that decision in compliance with the Information and Privacy Commissioner's report. It's pretty much all there is to it. I think it's not really an arguable proposition. We should just correct whatever we've done that's not in compliance and comply. Thank you.
Councillors, just bring you to be aware that in the management comments it already says that parts A and B, which Councillor O'Connor has just been referring to, have already been finalised. But I might just ask a governance officer, Mr. Brown, to provide any additional comments. Mr. Brown, as his role as public officer.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. So to clarify, the original decision was made by my predecessor in her role as public officer. That decision was that the documents were legally privileged documents, and therefore it was not in the public interest to release those documents. That was appealed to the IPC. Now, just to clarify the IPC's decision, the IPC asked the decision to be reviewed on the basis that legal professional privilege can't be called on all documents without each individual document having been considered on its own merit. As per the IPC's request, I then reviewed each individual document on its own merit rather than declaring all documents to be privileged documents. So in doing so, I determined that each of those documents on their own merit continued to be documents that were not in the interest of the public to be released, and that they were legally privileged documents. That decision is a decision made in the function as public officer and not one that can be directed one way or the other. It's meant to be an impartial decision made by the person duly appointed to that role. So that has occurred. So A and B have occurred. That the IPC's recommendation was not that the documents were released, but that the decision was reviewed. And that decision has been reviewed, and the initial decision was upheld with further reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Councillor O'Brien, do you wish to speak for this?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay.
Councillor O'Brien.
A couple of issues with that. The review was made and it seems a similar outcome occurred. And basically I can see the justification made by Mr. Brown was exactly the same justification that was considered an error in the application of public interest. The public interest is in the report, it said in the errors that were made that were inconsistent with the Act, that the council staff misinterpreted the first basic application of public interest by determining that there was no overriding interest, no overriding public interest, when it should be applied quite the opposite. It should be applied that something is withheld only if there is an overriding public interest not to disclose. And that is the kind of basis of all, not only local government, but all levels of government when it comes to transparency. It's not that the onus is absolutely in the opposite direction, that the government must be transparent by default unless we're protecting confidentiality for a very specific reason. There were many, many other errors of fault, errors inconsistent with the Act. I think the review should have been to address all those particular issues. We haven't seen that. I think in at least a dozen other ways the Commission found the staff decision to be inconsistent with the Act. This is not a trivial matter, it's an important matter because it's around transparency. And including one of the criticisms they made was that the disclosure would take 40 hours of staff time without them demonstrating why it would take so long. Many other rules of procedural fairness were not followed. So the overriding principle, of course, is that when council makes a decision, and the decision is based on information, legal information, and councillors must vote on this, it's crucial that the information on which those decisions are based, that the public should have access to those. We believe that, from my understanding of this, that this decision is not a good decision, not a fair decision, not a transparent decision. Basically, Australian local governments and all governments could basically decide to not disclose anything if it wasn't in their interest, and the public would be none the wiser. So we're requesting that the public are the wiser and that this review should happen again. It's a public interest issue and it's a transparency issue, and we should be provided with the documents on which that very crucial decision was made. That was a recommendation on which we had to make a decision with no proper information. We believe that that should be reviewed again, and for the interest of public transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Mr. Brown, would you like to provide any clarification on Councillor O'Brien's comments?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Councillor O'Brien, I'm not sure that you have fully considered the updated advice or decision. In relation to the initial advice that there would be a certain amount of time taken to undertake the work, that was actually withdrawn in the second and serves no purpose in the review. However, I just refer you to the matters of Woollahra Municipal Council and Westpac Banking Corp and the Commissioner of the AFP and Prop End Finance. Those matters both reiterate the fact that legal professional privilege documents have, on the face of them, are privileged, and therefore it's not in the public interest to release those documents. That is the starting point that was created in those two cases. That does not say that every legal privilege document isn't to be released. What that says is that each individual document needs to be considered on its merit. My predecessor did not consider each individual document on its merit, but rather the entire documents in one. My decision is based on the fact that I considered each individual document, and therefore I was satisfied that the documents were subject to legal professional privilege and that there was no conclusive presumption of any overriding public interest against disclosure. That's the role of the public officer. The public officer is a statutory independent role that shouldn't be at the direction of councillors. Individual GIPA applicants, which these individual applicants are councillors, if they're not happy with the decision made and the review made, should appeal in accordance with the GIPA Act, and I believe the appropriate authority for appeal is NCAT, not a council decision. So this, whilst I understand that what's trying to be achieved here, I would just warn that being too, or that interference with the public officer's role, it could also be a bit of an issue that may arise from this. Councillor O'Connor, I think you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown. Look, I don't want to drag us into protracted legal debate in the council debate. I think that's not profitable. So what I'm offering is that I would, with the agreement of the seconder, withdraw B for now. And
Councillor O'Connor, you've moved your motion, and we've had Councillor O'Brien seconded. You've had advice from Mr. Brown, so I'll now put it to anyone wishes to speak against this motion.
I'm just trying to shorten the debate, Mr. Mayor, by saying I'm happy, my seconder is happy to withdraw B so that we can protract, we don't have to go to a protracted debate. I wish to withdraw part B of the motion, which I think is the area where I do not want to argue with Mr. Brown.
Okay.
And I'm
Councillor O'Connor, you're withdrawing part B. Does Councillor O'Brien agree? Councillor O'Brien, just put your hand up if you agree. Okay, you nod your head. So part B is withdrawn. So Councillor Witters wishes to speak against?
Yeah, if you can just give us a thumbs up if you can hear me. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, again, noting that what's in the motion and what's in the not only the management comments but also Mr. Brown's comments and what the mover and seconder have spoken about. I think again everything that they want done has been done. It's been reviewed and reviewed as Mr. Brown said individually, and listening to the mover and the seconder. Just based on that, it seems that whether they have a question around the public officer's independence in regards to reviewing these, from the comments that they made, that's the impression that I got. So just wondering whether they're questioning where the experience of the public officer and the public officer's independence based on the advice that he's already given.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. A speaker for the motion, but this is only part A, remember. Councillor Robertson.
Well, I just want to make first a quick comment, and that is that I received an email from Scott Waterston, who is our
Councillor Robertson, you're going to have to speak very slowly because you're coming across extremely broken. So go ahead.
Okay, I received an email from Scott Waterston on the 23rd of April, which said that all it would take to release all these documents would be a resolution of council. And I would like to say that while we're already noting A, A lot of the difficulties that we are facing might have been avoided if we'd been able to get relevant quality information on which to make good decisions for our community. The documents in question were commissioned by council, they were paid for by using public funds, and as councillors, we are the decision makers, and we really, really needed to see these documents to help us understand and resolve the issues we're facing. And I'd just like to remind everybody of our code of meeting practice, which states that council and committee meetings should be transparent, that decisions are made in a way that is open and accountable and informed. Decisions are made based on relevant quality information. And it's perfectly clear that the difficulties we are facing are partly because this hasn't happened. And maybe I will later send around Scott Watson's email saying that all it would have taken would have been a resolution of council to release this information that would have made such a difference to the interactions between councillors. So I hope you will all support this notation as it is, and let's get on with resolving our issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Is there a speaker against the motion? Okay, Councillor O'Connor, your right to reply.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, as I said before, I don't want to engage in public argument with advice from our governance officer. So as a result of that, I've withdrawn B with the consent of Councillor O'Brien. So look, there's really nothing controversial now. A is simply that council notes this report from the Information and Privacy Commissioner. That's completely uncontentious, so I just urge councillors to support the noting of that document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillors, we'll start the vote on that, please. So if you go down to your phones, iPads, and vote. Stacey, can you close the poll, please?
Who's that?
Two, four, so councillors, it looks like that motion has been passed. So moving on to 8.3, the council notes and acts on the intent meaning of not adopting.
Can I ask what the vote is, please? Can you please inform us what the vote was? You said it's passed. What was the vote?
If you look on the screen, councillor, it's 6 for, 5 against. So, Councillor Robson, you want to move this?
Yes, I'll move it.
The seconder?
Yeah, also.
Councillor O'Connor. So, moved by Councillor Robertson, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. So, Councillor Robertson, again, I urge you to speak for it, please.
Can I first please ask a question before we debate this issue? And this question is that the map states that council has recognised that vehicle traffic poses a risk to pedestrians. And obviously, nobody would ever dispute that fact, especially given the tragic death last year of a user of the pedestrian crossing on Markham Street. But my question relates to any information about safety issues in relation to the current usage of the mall. Because as far as I know, most people feel a lot safer walking down the Central Mall than the West Mall or in front of Central. And to try and find out where all this was coming from, I searched for the 162 pages of the Have Your Say submissions for the April meeting about safety concerns, and I couldn't find a single one about safety of the current setup of the mall. I also watched the online debate with the same result. So my question again is, why are we organising a third-party external review, and how much will it cost, and how does it fit in with our budget constraints?
Sorry, councillors, I have to move around the screen. Before I get Councillor O'Connor to speak, I might get the CEO just provide Councillor Robinson with clarification. So, CEO.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Unfortunately, Councillor Robinson, I wasn't able to hear clearly your whole question. If I can just reinforce to everybody the management comment. Since the council resolution in relation to the traffic committee minutes, there have been concerns raised by both the police and RMS about the safety issues, both from the turn from Faulkner Street into the mall by traffic, as well as the existence of traffic in the mall itself, which is why, from a health and safety traffic point of view, we've decided to proceed to prepare and have an external party prepare an assessment of that to be reported to the traffic committee. We've also met through the auspices of Councillor Bailey, some of the members of the traders in the mall who are supportive of getting the health and safety report done. And in the meantime, we've confirmed that there'll be no change to the existing arrangements of drop-offs and deliveries into the mall.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor
O'Connor. My question was, how much will it cost? And can the CEO please answer that as well?
Councillor, CEO.
At this stage, we do not have a full costing for that piece of work. It is a health and safety issue, so it is a matter of priority.
Thank you, CEO. Now, Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, look, I would just like to reiterate the basic point, which is that when we knock down a positive recommendation for change, in this case clearly based on enormous public opposition to that recommendation for change contained in those paragraphs from the minutes of the traffic committee, that is all we are making a decision on. We're not therefore to be inferred to have made a further decision to change arrangements that are the status quo, if you like. And I think as a principle, that needs to be clearly stated, not just amongst ourselves as the governing body and staff, but also for the benefit of the community, and in particular to those businesses that would have been affected by this so-called, change arising from a simple rejection of a proposal for change. There is no requirement necessarily flowing from the decision to reject the traffic committee's proposal to then go on and change the status quo. Now, with respect to the CEO's comments about this new advice that we're now going to invest in third-party inquiry. All I can say about that is that because I have no information other than this very scanty comment, managerial comment, I can't comment either way on that, but I would be concerned, as is Councillor Robinson, in relation to how this arose, what the cost will be. I'm not happy to think that we've launched into a process not knowing what the costs are going to be. I think this is a matter, as it is so important, of health and safety, that should have been brought to the governing body by way of either a workshop or some kind of notification, other than just a very slight comment at the bottom of a motion that's been initiated by members of the governing body to try and protect adverse impacts to traders in the mall who are currently battling the economic downturn of a deserted mall as a result of the coronavirus lockdown. You know, please, let's just allow councillors to know what's going on. Don't infer that there was any uncertainty. And I notice, in respect of the question on notice on this matter, that it's asserted that there's some kind of uncertainty resulting from a simple decision to reject a proposal for change. There's no uncertainty. The status quo stands. Now, circumstances are overtaking us fast, and there's nothing that I can do other than to support this motion. There's no uncertainty. We need to know the costs, and we would really appreciate being included in anything that relates to changes that might be being contemplated to improve the safety and the economic, the safety of our community, but also the economic circumstances in which some of our very fragile businesses in the mall are operating. So I support this motion. I ask all councillors to support it. There is no uncertainty. We'll deal with this question of an external inquiry in another place or space, I imagine. But at the moment, I would just ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Now, just to remind you that all councillors did receive an email from the CEO related to this some time back. So a speaker against this have moved and seconded and both spoke. So Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Sorry, that was my fault. I unmuted myself on my computer instead of using the council mic. So my apologies, everybody. This motion has come about due to I believe, and it's my personal opinion, that people did not necessarily do their homework properly around the original motion. Now, yes, the status quo may stand, but the status quo is that there has never been a safety report for pedestrians, and the nearest thing that we had was that the report to the traffic meeting that if there was going to be traffic coming into the mall for drop-off zones, that the shared zones need to be properly marked out, etc. Now, by the motion that was voted for at the last meeting now means that the consequence of that is that, well, we are left with the problem and the dilemma of traffic coming in for drop-off zones, yet we have no assurances that council or businesses will be protected if there is the event of a pedestrian being injured. Now, there has been precedent where in Queensland where council has been taken to court, etc., where a person has been run over by traffic, by vehicles in a mall situation. So it would be prudent, and I would say negligent, if we did not go ahead with a study to ensure that we are ensuring the safety of the pedestrians and traffic users, whether it's general businesses in the mall or whether it's even the markets in the mall. No safety reports have been done in the past. If my recollection of conversations that I have had in discussing this matter is that it has been done in an informal manner, agreements to allow traffic in there. Well, we have a responsibility to formalise that. And this motion is only coming up because councillors chose to not look deeply into the impact and the consequences of what they were voting on. And so therefore, I'm not going to support this motion. I do support the management comment to go forward with a safety review. And but in principle, we've only got this motion due to the vote of from people that did not properly investigate or do their homework around this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. A speaker for the motion? Councillor Withers?
Yeah. We're digressing from what this motion's about. A lot of people are speaking to a different issue at the moment, in and around the cost of the mall and studies and the management comments. The actual motion here is that council notes enacts the intended meaning of the original motion, which was Councillor Tiley's foreshadowed motion at the last meeting, and that this motion is to keep the status quo of the arrangements within the mall before that meeting. So all that other issue that's being discussed at the moment is basically not in regards to this motion. This motion is to keep the status quo of the arrangements that were in the mall before that motion passed. In regards to Councillor Gray's comments, I sort of agree that the original motion put by Councillor Martin to defer that part of the traffic committee meetings so that some more investigations could be done probably should have been followed to begin with. This notion that the mall's some sort of special place, it's been changed more times than I've changed my jumpers. So it's not at its original setting. So to try and claim heritage or anything else on it it's the fact that it's been changed that many times. It's lost its heritage, but also it's not an overwhelming, again, to keep it as it is, it's not an overwhelming consensus within the community. There are so many people around that want to change, want something else as well. So to continue to push that narrative, you're pushing untruths. We've got to be, as a lot of us like to say, we've got to be transparent in regards to that. So the fact that whether our personal views on whether it has to stay as the mall or anything else is irrelevant. But back to my point, because I'm digressing as well, is this motion is just about keeping the status quo before what was set in place. So let's vote on that. And if there's any other issues, then people can put up their own motions around it later on.
Thank you, Councillor Withers. A speaker against the motion? Okay, Councillor Robinson, your right to reply.
Okay, well, let me first put the correct Councillor Withers' comments. This motion is not about keeping the status quo in the mall. It is about the interpretation of last month's council resolution. That was when we did resolve to keep the status quo. And all we're saying is that is what we resolved. That is how our motion should be interpreted. And I'd also like to correct another misconception, which is that some councillors have not done their homework on the safety issues. Safety issues of the whole of Armadale were done when we had a road safety officer, which was only a few years ago. Many issues were raised, but not one of them was about safety issues in the mall. And that was also came up when we debated this motion last month. There was not one point raised about safety of pedestrians in the mall. So bringing it up now is a bit of a surprise. I urge everyone to say that if we are concerned about safety, let's not just consider them all. Let's consider all the safety issues in Armadale. There's no point in worrying about the safety of a safe area when there are many possibly more dangerous areas for pedestrians. the West Mall or walking in front of Central, which I'd certainly be more worried about. So let's just go back to the original motion, which is just to clarify what we voted on, what the majority of councils voted on the last meeting. For the time being, to keep the status quo. And when we look at the
Councillor Robinson, you're just a bit unreadable on that. So, you're breaking up very badly. So I'll put the motion to the vote. So Stacey, if you can open the poll, please.
Should be now visible for councillors.
Stacey, if you can close the poll, please. Okay, councillors, I declare that motion as being won. Moving on to 8.4. Now, Councillor Robinson, I just hope you can speak clearly. You might have to make all your speeches very short. So Councillor Robinson moves. Is there a seconder? No seconder? Councillor O'Connor. So Councillor Robinson moved, Councillor O'Connor seconded. So Councillor Robertson.
Okay. The floor. If anybody just please raise your hand.
Councillor Robertson, you're totally we cannot hear what you're saying. So what we may have to do is just you try and sort out your system, and Councillor move to Councillor O'Connor.
Is there any way that we can have someone else speak for it then, Mayor, please?
Or if she can phone in, can she phone in, Simon, Mayor?
We check on that, but I'm just going to ask Councillor O'Connor, since she seconded, to speak now.
Does Councillor Gallatley wish to speak for me? I'm happy for that.
I'd be happy to speak on Dorothy's. I would be happy to speak on Dorothy's behalf if that's what it takes.
Councillor O'Connor, you are the seconder, so I'm asking you to speak.
All right. Just let it be noted that I would be very delighted if Councillor Gallatley wanted to speak on my behalf while Councillor Robinson gets her technology problems sorted. Mr. Mayor, I don't have any particular beef on this matter. I just wanted to second it, but I'm really happy. I think Councillor Gallatley has something special to add, and I'd be delighted if he is able to do that.
Councillor Robinson, are you able to speak now?
I'm not sure. Does anybody people hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but speak slowly and you might be able to get through, but keep it short, please.
Okay. One-off assists to help residents recover from the drought doesn't invalidate the regular user pays principle. And just because some residents are being helped with free mulch doesn't mean we shouldn't offer assistance to help people recover from the drought. The Environmental Sustainability Committee unanimously endorse this recommendation, which also complies with the New South Wales Government's guidelines to reuse green waste by mulching and composting. We don't want it to go to landfill. And more importantly, this will benefit low-income families who are prepared to wait for the free disposal days, as well as rural residents who don't have access to council's organics collection service. And I would argue that we've already had $2.2 million of drought and bushfire recoveries. And it's a real shame that we couldn't have considered this as part of that project. But I still think it's a really important recommendation that was raised by our community, and we should be listening to our community. And if that's what they want, we should be listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. As a resident of the council area, I do have questions about equity, but I'll put this. Is there a speaker against the motion?
Yeah.
So, Councillor Connor, you've seconded. So, Councillor Withers.
Yeah, just got a little bit of concerns in regards. Someone who chased this issue up probably about 2 years ago myself, and got the same sort of response. And considering where we are in regards to the financial stuff, looking at the management comment, the fact that this will affect us in the financial department, I think has to be seriously looked at. I can understand the points of this motion, that there are some people within the community who would benefit from it greatly, but it's a whole picture sort of an issue, and we really need to make sound financial decisions in regards to a lot of things, and sometimes it's an unfortunate thing of being responsible, is that some of the decisions don't really help those that need it. This could be one of them. I do note that there are, for an example, precedent has already been set in regards to the water stations at the Arboretum, how people who don't need the service take advantage of the service. So the fact that at the time there was people who didn't need the water were really abusing that system. And this is another thing where, as the management stated, that those who don't need the green waste, need the free days for the green waste, will hoard a lot of stuff that doesn't really need to go into the green waste and try and hide it, and all the unnecessary things that people don't need to do. So considering that we have a waste management plan, I think, as well, just from what I just read, let me just go back and look. We really need to follow our own things like that. So as much as it could be needed for a lot of people, we've got to really think about the financial situation that we're currently in. So I would, question that on whether it's a sound financial decision at the moment.
Councillor Tyler, you wish to speak again for the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And in respect of what Councillor Withers has just said, he may not realise that the garbage service charge is a separate and distinct charge. It's not at all connected to the general fund. It's like water and sewage, and the garbage charge facility, I understand, is in reasonable shape, and all that we're seeking is once a month, 1 day, for those residents that want to get rid of some green waste. It's not a big deal, but it's certainly nothing to do with our financial situation because it's not connected to general fund. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler, it's interesting. I would have thought the funds would have come out of the general fund. So any speaker against the motion?
Mr Mayor, I didn't get a chance to speak for the motion, and I think I should have.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I actually agree with the Councillor Witter's comments, particularly around the finance. Anything that's going to disrupt the budget at this stage, we're also feeling the pinch just the same as residents are. And at the end of the day, that on-flows to other ratepayers through other fees and charges. So to say it's just something that we can do, it's only once a month, it's only this, it's only that. Well, I don't believe, and reading from the report and the management comment, it doesn't actually seem to be the issue that it was back 6 months ago. The situation has actually changed, and I think it can be reviewed later on if the problem arises where there is excessive green waste. Revisit it then, but at this stage we're coming into winter. The growth of our gardens, etc. It's going to be reducing, etc. So revisit it later. It's not actually relevant for right now.
Speaker for the motion. Councillor Gillespie.
It might be a little bit of a seasonal thing, I suppose you could call it, of Councillor Gray, if you want to take Councillor Gray's opinion. But I think there's plenty of councils around that would be very happy to help the residents that are concerned with a lot of their green waste. Look, it's really a no-brainer, mate. 1 day a week, 1 day a month is not a problem. I think we've needed it here for years and years and years. We get on, we make the decision. I suppose, look, people can abuse everything that we do. They can abuse their own rubbish pickup. They put too much rubbish in the bin, or they don't put enough in the bin. That's fine, but just move on with this and give the people what they want, which is they do want. To get rid of their green waste without it costing them a heap of money. I think it's a great thing, and we can most definitely go along with it. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Gillespie. A speaker against the motion? Okay, I'll ask Councillor Robinson for right to reply.
When will I get my speech as seconder, Mr Mayor?
Councillor O'Connor, I did ask you to speak when Councillor Robinson could not speak, and you said you seconded it, and you didn't wish to speak at the time. So you've had a chance. So Councillor Robinson?
Not true. Not true, Mr Mayor. I dissent. You're trying to mute me, Mr Mayor, because you don't like my motion of dissent. I move a motion of dissent. I second it.
Do we have a seconder for the okay, Councillor O'Brien. So Stacey, can we have a poll set up for a motion of dissent, please?
Dr. Mayor, just if we could just address Councillor Robinson in relation to her IT issues. Owen has resolved the microphone issue from this end. So we think, the microphone connected to your computer should now work, Councillor Robinson. If you just put it back on, we'll be able to perhaps hear you a little bit better, the headset. If you put that back on, we should be able to hear you a bit better.
Well, can you hear me now if I speak into the microphone?
Yes, we can.
Perfectly, Councillor Robinson. Cheers. Okay.
You.
So, thank you. We're dealing with this procedure. It's written down as procedure motion. So, can I, Stacey, if you can close the poll, please?
And speak. Is that better if I speak?
Thank Councillor Robinson. Yes, Councillor Robinson. Just delay your speaking. We're just doing this dissent motion, which is procedure motion number 2. So, Stacey, you can close the poll, please.
Mr. Mayor, am I able to ask a question in regards to this motion of dissent? And in regards, I'll call it a point of order to bring it to attention. In regards to the code of meeting practice, Councillor O'Connor was given the opportunity, and this is being streamed live, so anyone that wants to go back and re-watch it can, but she was given the opportunity to speak as the seconder when Councillor Robinson's microphone was
Point of order,
not
Mr.
working.
Mayor.
Hang on, I'm halfway through a point of order here. So I'm asking a question whether it is a point of order.
But you have no right to a point of order at this stage.
Around the dissension motion, and I'd really appreciate, I don't interrupt you, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't
You have
interrupt
no
me
right to
in
this
regards
point of
this.
order.
To continue my question,
Councillors, that Councillor Widders has raised a point of order, so Councillor O'Brien, please wait for him to finish his.
does her, now my memory may not be the best, but Councillor O'Connor was given the chance to speak and she said, no, I won't say it word for word, but the gist I got from it was, don't really have a lot of it. I would like Councillor Galettley to take my seconder for me and speak for that. And she said, I don't really have anything. Does that count as her, as the seconder, does that count as her turn of speaking? And man, does the seconder later on, because they want to say something else, have a right to reply? All right, does the mover of the motion have a right to reply?
Councillor Widders, that's the way I took it, and I ruled it that way. Now, councillors can have a motion of dissent, which Councillor O'Connor's put up, and by the look of it, the motion has been, her dissent motion's been passed. So therefore, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Connor, you have to switch your microphone on, and also please turn it off when you're finished.
I do. I mean, I am trying, believe me. Look, I don't want to be long-winded about this. I simply always wanted to say that this is not about a general right to a free day for green waste. You know, it's simply about allowing people to have a free day a month in order to clear their land of the dead green material that's died last year during the drought. As we know, we drive around everywhere. There's a huge amount of dead trees and shrubbery that's just sadly a tragic consequence of the drought and our extreme water restrictions, which continue. It's very difficult in the circumstances of level 5 water restrictions to keep plants alive. Now, I think the community's been commended everywhere for its enormous efforts in restraining its water use, and gardens have died as a consequence, trees and shrubs have died. That's bad enough. But the point of this motion and the point of the ESAC committee's support for it, was always to allow people to at least mitigate their loss by being able to get that dead drought-related material to the tip once a month without being charged for that. I mean, people have really dug deep. They've lost valuable years and years of labour losing their plants because they couldn't water them. I do have to say that Council, Armidale Regional Council, and in particular its predecessor, you know, has always anticipated and told the community that they should, you know, enjoy the natural resource of water that we have here. We now know that the 2019 drought was unprecedented and that it just couldn't have been in the contemplation of anybody who planted trees and shrubs in Armidale in particular that they wouldn't have enough water to keep them alive. You know, just from a natural rainfall point of view, but also from Council's water supply point of view until 2019. Our residents dug deep. They dug really deep to save the water in Malpas when we needed to. As a consequence, their gardens died. As a consequence, there's a lot of dead green material that's now brown that needs to be cleared away so they can replant their gardens or plant it with, you know, concrete if they wish. But this is just part of adjustment to what's been a horrible natural disaster for our community last year. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to just say to them, guys, we're going to help you. You helped us maintain the water supply. You helped us with Malpas. You haven't whinged about the pipeline going north and depleting the Malpas supply. You've just been exemplary in your behaviour. Now we're going to reward you with a free green waste day once a month to help you clean up, make your place look nice again. For goodness sake, if we can't do this for our residents, really, truly, we're just so hard-hearted, and we stand, I think, rightfully to be condemned by the public if we cannot vote to give them a free green waste day for the next few months. And I certainly applaud the mulch, but that is really a separate matter. Thanks, John. I will wrap up. At this point, let's reward our residents just with this little gesture to help them get their gardens nice again, and
Yes.
give them free
Thank
mulch
you,
too.
Councillor Connor. Is there a speaker against the motion? Okay, I'll put it back to Councillor Robertson as right a reply.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Okay, well, this was basically an issue that we've been through one of the worst droughts in history, and we really do need to heed the needs of our residents. It seems on the one hand we've lots of money for an external review of traffic safety in the mall, despite no hint of an issue ever being presented to council. And the other thing to remember is that this was put to the February meeting and was deferred pending a discussion of the drought review funding. And the idea was it would come out of that. So if that had happened, if the deferral and the consideration of this issue that was raised in the February council meeting, then maybe we would have had a better time discussing it now. But as I say, there's still a need for it. We're still under level 5 drought restrictions. So I hope my fellow councillors will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Stacey, can you open the poll, please?
Should be visible now.
Stacey, can you close the poll, please? Okay, councillors, the results are in. The motion's been won. So moving on to item 11.1, the Jimeric dam wall stabilisation. So can I have a move? Councillor Gray moved. Seconder? Councillor Murat. Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. This is a very exciting time to finally get movement on an issue or a matter that's been 20 years in the making. This has been, I think it was back in, I don't know, early 2000s, where it was labelled as a societal risk that lies above the safety threshold, as described by the Dam Safety New South Wales. Now, it has reached a critical point. I would like to mention that it's great to see that we're moving forward with this, knowing that we are taking the money to do this out of the water fund, and it's quite pleasing that we did not go ahead with the recreational side of Jimeric Dam, because it would have it would have delayed being able to afford to get this done, this more urgent repairs for the dam and to ensure our community safety. It would have delayed that significantly, and it would have put us under even more financial stress. And God forbid that if we did the recreational area first and then we had to do this, we probably would have wasted any funds going on to the recreational area, as the works for the dam wall would probably have ruined it. So this is a legacy issue. It's now come forward. We are at a stage where we cannot delay this any longer, and let's just get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Murat.
I totally support the fact that we're now in a position to move forward to stabilise the dam. Unlike Councillor Gray, I can't see any connection between doing the recreational side of the dam and the structural side of the dam. The recreational side wasn't even with Council's budget. Council did have an opportunity to get funding for the recreational side, I believe, but this was never followed up. And that funding was totally unrestricted, didn't require any contribution from Council. So I can't see how the two are connected, but I do support the fact that we are moving forward with the securing of the safety of that dam. It is a recreational area that in time will be fully developed and will be of great benefit to the community. Thank you.
Councillor Connor used to speak against the motion. Councillor Connor, you have to turn your mic on.
Can't you do that? Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment, just an additional paragraph, which would be that Council request the New South Wales Government to see if it can renew its offer of funding for recreational facilities upgrade at Jumaric Dam. Because
Councillor O'Connor, could you just repeat that for the minute takers, please?
Yeah, sure. That Council request the New South Wales Government to see if the offer or if its offer of funding for upgrade of recreational facilities at Jumaric Dam could be renewed.
Councillor O'Connor, is that basically your amendment?
Yes, it's an additional paragraph C.
Yep. Just before we go, I just want to see whether Councillor Gray and Councillor Murat are happy with that additional to the motion. Councillor Gray? Just if you know, raise your head or not.
Yeah, not as an addition. It can be put forward separately in a different separate motion, but not in addition to this one.
Yep.
Well, can I propose then that
just a minute, Councillor Connor. Just a minute, yeah, Councillor Connor. Through the CEO, I'd like Mr. Scott McDonald to comment on this. So, Scott, if you're on the available.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'd just make the point that, as per the management comments, the funding that we expect to get from the New South Wales Government comes from the DPIE water, and it is the aim or the goal of that funding is to stabilise the dam as per their requirements. We do have a small component of this, about $500,000. We believe will make some minor modifications around the dam. I think it's described in there, things such as the boat ramp, toilets, and some of the roads. What the council there is suggesting is another source of funding, such as regional growth funds or stronger country communities, or a pot of money like that. This motion is I think very clear. It's about the stabilisation of the dam. We have suffered, I think, as a council and community, by mixing up various aims and objectives in the past. So I just want to, I guess I just encourage councillors to be focused on what we're trying to achieve here, and that is a safety outcome as directed by the Dam Safety Board.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So the amendment has been not supported by the mover, and therefore I'll require a seconder for the amendment. So, Councillor Robinson, are you seconding? Yep. So, Councillor O'Connor. O'Connor, you have to switch your mic on. I'm not your babysitter.
Well, I very much hope that is the case. Thought raises imaginations that I don't want to have. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm pretty happy to have this dealt with in seriatim as a separate issue, and I think that would make it easier for members of council. And I note Mr. McDonald's observations, with which I agree. However, I don't think that it's an impossibility for us to revisit, or ask the state government to revisit, the offer of quite substantial funding. And it's bearing in mind what Councillor Gray said, that maybe it's better to stabilise the dam wall and then get on with upgrading the recreational facilities. But nevertheless, there was an opportunity that somehow we lost last year in relation to the state government's desire, which I think was a very reasonable one given the drought and the difficulties we have had. We don't actually have a decent natural water recreational facility. We don't have a town beach. We used to have Jimaric Dam. We used to have the Blue Hole, but the fluctuations in our water supply and the nature of the water supply to the Blue Hole in the national park are such that we no longer have a reliable sort of town beach out there. We no longer have a decent town water recreation area in Jimaric Dam. I was out there last Tuesday. It's so shabby, it's horrible. It's depressing, really, to see the age and the decrepitude of the facilities out there and the lack of facilities. I just thought this was an opportunity to ask council to express an opinion on renewing that offer of substantial funding last year for upgrade of the Jimaric Dam recreational facilities. It matches well with this program. I have no argument with Mr. McDonald in relation to the sources of funding. Yes, they would be different, but I don't think this precludes us from asking the state government in a separate but somewhat related way to renew their offer of substantial funding for that upgrade. And we have this opportunity. Let's go for it. Let's vote in seriatim. No problem. Thank you.
Councillor O'Connor, following on from Mr. McDonald's comments that not trying to excuse the expression muddy the waters, would you be prepared to take this motion of yours as a notice of motion at the next council meeting, rather than having it, otherwise it will be part of this motion and therefore contrary to what Mr. McDonald is trying to achieve?
With great respect, Mr. Mayor, I don't actually, want to argue with you or Mr. McDonald, but I don't think that Mr. McDonald's comments forbid us from doing this. I mean, he's raised the question that the DPIE water resources, fine. And yes, they would have to probably come from a separate bucket with the state government, but this is a separate part of the motion. There is a comment in the report from management in relation to some upgrade of the recreational facilities. Why not just take that a bit further with a separately voted on part of this motion?
Councillor Connor, I take that as a no. Okay. Councillor Robinson, you seconded this amendment?
Yes, I support everything that Councillor O'Connor said. I am struggling with the audio, by the way, because everything that I say is coming back to me on a delay. So if I don't sound as good as normal, just accept that. But I also, before I we vote on this, can I ask a couple of questions? And one is that can staff confirm whether the statement on page 10 of the GHD report were engaged that in 2000, GHD were engaged in 2009, or was it 2019, which seems more likely. Maybe staff can comment on that. And also, could staff also comment on the options of seeking additional funds for recreational aspects? Because this is a legacy issue that affects safety. So are there any other options for funding apart from the water fund, which is really concerned with supplying current water and treating current water and all the infrastructure that we have to use from that water fund?
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'll ask through the CEO, Mr. McDonald, to provide comment to your questions. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm sorry, I don't think I picked up any of that. I think I heard something about GHD, and then I think I heard something at the end about the recreational aspects to it. If I heard rightly about the recreational aspects in the motion and the management comments is an outline of what we hope to do with what we were advised by the Dam Safety Board and the DPIEW is that we could do some aspects around the foreshores and bundle that up into the project. So obviously it wouldn't be a big scale, but we could do approximately $500,000 worth of work, so long as it was connected with the foreshores and connected with the water. So I think that describes there, and that's probably pushing the envelope as to what we can do. We can certainly do things such as boat ramps, but look, we've got guidance. We can believe we can do that. If I understood the first part of the question, and I really probably only heard about a third of it, there should have been a GHD report attached. It was about 200 pages. I guess we would just steer the councillors to the recommendation that the officers are putting up, and that is option 3, and that's pre-tensioning bolts. It's a bit like the coal mines where you bolt the roof up into the wall. So it's install post-tensioning anchors, they call it. So again, we're acting on guidance from what the Dam Safety Board will accept and the DPIEW would prefer. It isn't the cheapest, but we believe this will put the matter to rest. It will meet those safety 1 in 100 year risks and put this to bed forever. As I say, again, I would just urge the committee, every time we put this off, we incur more costs, and that's inflationary costs with construction and engineering. Since the last motion of Armidale Jumeirah Council considered this, we've gone from 5 million to at least a minimum of 6, and it could be as much as 8, depending on what the tenders come back as. So if you need more engineering, I can provide that. But I think, as one of the speakers said before, we don't have any more time. The Dam Safety Board required us to commence the works towards the end of last year. We didn't do that for drought reasons and other pressures that were on council, but we now have a fairly clear pathway forward, and I would just make the strong recommendation that we move forward as recommended by the officers.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. The CEO was here and heard all of Councillor Robinson's questions, so I might just ask her to fill in those points. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I understood from Councillor Robinson's question it was related to the 2009 GHD report. I'm not precisely sure of the date of the engagement of GHD, but I do know that the sequence goes that the 2015 commissioning of ARUP by the old Armidale Jumeirah Council to develop a design and plan was neither accepted by the peer review that the council sought to have undertaken of the ARUP design, nor the Dam Safety Committee, which was why subsequently GHD were engaged to prepare the detailed designs.
Thank you, CEO. We've had Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Robinson speak to the amendment. Now, it is written down in the text in that screen as procedure motion, but it is an amendment. So, a speaker against the amendment, Councillor Witters.
I think you may have answered my question, but I'll speak against it anyway. Because they're broken up into two different sections, the amendment's now being, so it is an amendment, not a procedural motion?
It is an amendment,
Just to clarify
yes.
that? Okay, alrighty. I think, as has been stated before through all the speakers, whether it's been councillors or staff members, this needs to be done. As Councillor Gray said, the amendment can be its own motion, or it can be put up as something else. The first two parts of it really necessarily need to be done in regards to safety, and we've been waiting long enough for this to get done. Every single person, I suppose, that's grown up in this area has gone out and used Generic Dam one way or another, whether it's for a swim or a boat ride or a walk around the facilities. And the safety of those people out there should be paramount. As some councillors like to say, we need to really listen to the community and do what the community is asking us to do, and this has been going on long before our time on council. So it's a legacy thing that we've inherited. It needs to get done straight away. The time for stalling and continual amendments to stop it from happening or to slow it down or anything else, they need to be left in the past. We need to get this sorted as soon as possible, so that we then can do everything else we need to do to make Generic Dam the jewel in the crown of what it once used to be in regards to recreation in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Is there a speaker for the amendment? Councillor Tiley. Councillor Tiley, you have to speak, turn your mic on.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I would urge the mover and seconder of the substantive motion to embrace the amendment. If we go to tender, we secure a successful tenderer, we need money to implement the project. They go hand in hand. Let's not be pedantic. Let's add the amendment to the motion. We'll all support it and we'll get on with things. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against the amendment? Okay, I'll put that to Councillor O'Connor. Write a reply.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I only want to reiterate what Councillor Tiley said. You know, if it's such a drama, well, I'm happy for it to be voted for separately. But you know, if Councillor Gray and Councillor Murad are willing to endorse it as part of a single motion, that would be even better. So I suppose that's a question that I would like to put to them again. We know that the state government is very concerned about our water recreation facilities. We know that from events that happened last year. We've already costed at $3 million an upgrade to the Generic Dam recreational facilities. We know that the state government were in funds last year to well and truly, I think, meet that. Yes, it is a different task, but it's very much related, and it would be so wonderful if we could have, you know, the $500,000 foreshore works, as was described by Mr. McDonald, done as part of the upgrade to the dam wall process, but then we could sort of flow through that to actually end up not only with a beautiful pre-tensioned wall, if that can be done, which apparently it can, but also new boat ramps and facilities. But then the long-standing management plan, the master plan for the Generic Dam, which I'm sure Council still has, which was developed by Armidale Generic Council, which is all in place, costed, shovel ready to go. And we know the state government is aware of our need for this, and it would just be wonderful to be able to contact them and say, look, we just weren't in a position last year to say yes to that, but now we are. Could you please re-offer that to us. The money hasn't been, the money should be there somewhere. And, you know, could we just please have our town beach at last? You know, we're willing to do our part, but could we please have it? Yes, it comes from a separate bucket, but I don't think that would create any confusion in anybody's minds. But this is an integrated project, and as Councillor Tiley said, let's please just all get on with it. Thank you.
Okay, Stacey, can you open the poll, please?
Dr. Mayor, before we go to vote on this, can I may suggest that there is an amendment to the amendment in that the wording be that in parallel to A and B, so that makes sure that this part C, if it was to be brought in, does not hold up parts A and B. It can be done in parallel, but it cannot be done. The work on the dam is not held up because we haven't sought any funding from the government on the recreational area.
Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Robertson, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
Mr.
I never
Brown,
intended any delay. No.
Mr. Brown, can you just clarify what the amendment wording is?
Yeah, we're just typing it up now. So my understanding was that it would be in parallel with A and B, the council request, and then it would continue as it says.
Double L. That, yeah.
So that can become part C of the original motion. That's terrific. Thank you.
Yes.
So, Councillor Gray, if that was as you've got it, are you happy with the wording that's there, Councillor Gray?
Yes, I am, Dr. Mayor.
Councillor Gray and Councillor Murat, if that wording was there, would you be happy to that be part of the motion? Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Okay, so I think there's been a fair bit of debate on this, so I'll put the motion as that is there. So, Stacey, if you can open the poll, please, and it won't be a procedure one, it'll be just decision on this 11.1. So, open the poll, please. Okay, councillors, unanimous decision. Thank you. So moving on to councillors, item 13.1 and 16.2 are information. I'd like to treat them in globo unless someone wishes against. If so, can I have a mover and second, please? Councillor Murat, Councillor Gray. All those in favour? If you can just do a Stacey, are you prepared for a procedural vote that items 13.1 and 16.2 treated in globo and moved?
One sec, Dr. Mayor, we're just updating the system. We won't be one sec. It should be ready for councillors to vote on now.
So that's, councillors, is you're voting on 16.2 and 13.1. Going to Globo. So can you close the unanimous position? Thank you, councillors. So moving on to item 16.1, which is the minutes of the Traffic Advisory Committee. Can I have a move and a seconder, please? Councillor Martin. Councillor Gray. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, no comment. No comment, Ed.
Councillor Gray.
All good.
Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Otherwise, I'll put it. Can you, Stacey, are you ready for a 16.1, please?
While this is going through, can I ask a quick question, just in regards to the traffic committee, please?
Councillor Ledley, just ask privately, not that we are doing the vote now, so any discussion is closed. So the voting is closed and unanimous decision again. So moving on to...
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Items 18.1 to 18.4 have all been answered. The questions on notice, or 18.5, sorry, have all been answered. So, councillors, with your indulgence, I would like us to take a 7-minute break before we go into closed session. So, councillors, can I have a move and a second that we adjourn proceedings, Councillor Martin and Councillor Robinson, that we adjourn proceedings until 11:30. So all those in favour, just the hands will be the quickest here. Yep, carried unanimously. Yep. So, councillors, can I have a move and a second that we move into closed session to discuss matters? So, Councillor Murat, Councillor Robinson, those in favour? Shows hands, please. Unanimous decision. you.
Before we close the meeting, can I raise a matter of great urgency?
I've still got to go through. Councillors, can I have a move and a seconder that those motions passed in the closed session be adopted in an open session, please? Councillor Mirarat, Councillor Widders, those in favour? Hands, please. Yep. So now, Councillor O'Connor, you sent a message of urgent nature. Councillor O'Connor, you need to turn your microphone on.
Oh, there we go. Yes, look, I know Councillor Robinson's got something important to say as well, but I would just like to move a motion that Armidale Regional Council note its solidarity with our First Nations peoples and support the commemoration of Australia's National Sorry Day today.
I'll second.
Seconded
National
by...
Sorry Day was yesterday, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, sure. My advice is that it was, well, whichever day it is.
The walk on the bridge was the 27th, Councillor Widders.
So it's been moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Robinson, I think, wasn't it? Yep. Let's just put that. Proceed. Can I just have a show of hands, please? Those in favour of that motion?
Councillor O'Connor, are we able to get you to copy and paste that into the chat box if you've got it on your computer in that type of format?
Sure. I'll do it slowly though, but I will. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors. So the unanimous decision. Councillor Robinson.
I just wanted a motion of great urgency in relation to the Minister's notice. I've put it in the chat box, and it's just simply confirming what we're already doing, that in relation to the Minister's notion of intention to suspend the ARC, an open council meeting is held to comply with the request for ARC to provide its response by resolution. We're already going to do it, but...
Yes, Councillor Robinson, there's no need for any urgent motion because as we've said in the Mayoral Minute, we're having a workshop this afternoon, and on Friday we're going to have an extraordinary meeting. So that's already been dealt with, Councillor Robinson.
Okay, thank you. Then it's not necessary.
So, councillors,
with respect, Mr. Mayor, can we not move a motion that we have that extraordinary meeting on Friday and the time so that we can all sort our diaries? Make sure.
We'll notify you as soon as we can, Councillor O'Connor. It's okay, we will do it.
So we have to take from you that there will be a public meeting on Friday afternoon.
Yes, there will be. So, councillors, the time is 11:58. I hereby close the meeting. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you for attending.